Today, y'all are getting a little bit of a movie feature. Someone mentioned, hey, you should do a viability little video. And you know what? I agree. Because we still don't have one posted in the sub forum. And I think it's good to have something out there. Now, little disclaimer, part of the reason we don't have one is because the next two tier shifts Inu's gonna get are both projected to be very sizable. February is projected to be pretty sizable because, of course, RU just got a mega shift of drops from OU. And so they're probably going to drop a lot more than they normally would. And then, of course, March will then be sizable because they're going to get a mega drop from UU coming in February, which means they'll then dump a whole bunch of stuff on us in March. So it's a little bit hard to keep a thread like that up to date, but I'm going to give y'all something to work with today. Of course, you've been enjoying the content. Do subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We're trying our best. Hit that little 10K by the end of the year. And you know what? I have decided recently that we are hitting it. There was a little bit of, do I really want to hit it this year? Or am I going to wait till 2025? No, we're hitting it this year instead. So whether you want us to or not, it doesn't matter. Just join the movement and let's get this started. So this is based on someone's posting in the sub forum. So if we're missing a Pokemon or something, my bad, man. But we got a ton of mons here, and so at the very least we can rank all of these. Should be getting the vast majority of everything that you'd care about, at least. And of course you'll see some Pokemon that aren't allowed in the tiers, such as Titan being down here. So they just won't be ranked. Figure that's pretty obvious. And we're gonna go alphabetical, because that's the easiest way to go about something like this. So let's start off with Abomasnow, who I think I'd probably throw in like B- right now. Snow teams aren't really seen at all, but from using Veil on Hyper Offense with like things like Weather Ball Thunderous, really just Weather Ball Thunderous, mostly for the Veil part of it, it's been pretty good. And I don't think Abomasnow itself is particularly amazing, but I think at the very least, the way I see it, B- is like that last bastion of, you know what, you can seriously consider this on a team. You know, even if it's kind of specialized. Generally speaking, it's like C and B- are sort of like, you can build with them, but they're going to be very niche and generally specific to like maybe one type of build. Abomasnow I just view as like the upper end of that, so we'll put it in B-. Alchemy, this may shock some of y'all, I'm actually going to rank it. This is theory modding for sure, so take it with a grain of salt. I think Alchemy with double dance sets has at least enough reason to be used that we can justify it here. Terra, of course, does a lot of carrying there, but Acid Armor, Stored Power, Draining Kiss, Calm Mind is very serviceable. With Terra, the Steel types don't really threaten you anymore, and you even have a little bit of ability to navigate around some of the other bulky mons. I mean, you think about how you match up into Scrafty. Well, one, you already beat it normally, but if it Terras, I mean, it's not beating you. Snorlax, you're gonna boost faster than, and you can Stored Power it in the face. Pretty decent mon. So I think we can at least say C rank. Maybe this is like bottom of the barrel anyway, so hey, leave me alone. Now Altaria. Now this is honestly one of the harder mons for me to rank, and I say this because Altaria is something that I've tried to convince myself is maybe viable for basically this entire month. And it's because Inu hazard control isn't the best. So I'm looking at what are my options. Altaria does do a few things decently well. One of them being that it can actually threaten most of the rockers that you see run with a burn. And something like Raj doesn't want to be burned. Zong doesn't really want to be burned. Palisand doesn't care as much, but it still doesn't like the burn, because Palisand isn't really ever running, you know, lefties, so burn damage is sticking a lot more. And I mean, for a bulky mon, Altaria's got some decent speed, so you do actually get to threaten a lot of the other, you know, slow-ish wall breakers with damage before they can act. So it's not the worst mon ever. I just still don't really like Altaria, man. I think I'm gonna throw it. It's kind of like here for me, where I think I'll probably put it B-, because at the end of the day, if you're gonna build balance and look for a hazard mover there, your options are like Avalugg and Serena. And I'm frankly, personally, fine to just spam those forever. I don't view it as a bad thing. So I would put it about here. if you're going offense, you're never using an Altaria. Stall, I think, can use an Altaria, but it's still going to be kind of hard to justify when Avalug is an option, just better. You're going to need to make sure, if you're trying to like use Altaria on stall, it's going to have to be because you really want what Altaria is offering defensively between ground immunity and, I'm going to say Water Poros counter, although it does get Stone Edge. It's one of the closer things to a counter to that Mon. So yeah. And Perish Trap, I mean, it's still a set. You just don't really see it a ton right now, which is kind of odd because Perish Trap, like, in this meta, it sounds really good. So, there's that. Ambipom, now, Ambipom is another Mon that's kind of hard for me to gauge. Hitmontop's another remover, by the way. I should have mentioned him. I think Ambipom might put about B, though. And that's mostly because Triple Axle is pretty decent as a buff for it. Helps you get by Palisand. Also means that Flygon actually really has to be careful of getting knocked on a switch, because you will bonk it the next turn. Flygon already isn't a particularly good Mon to try to ever switch it in to begin with. You'd really only be switching it in if, like, I don't know, what are we predicting, a U-turn? Which, I mean, if you're predicting a U-turn, don't switch out. So, ignore that. Mostly, Axel helps with Palisand. But also, I mean, you could pop a Flygon. Maybe they try to KO you with Earthquake and it failed to. So that's an option. But I think mostly, you're getting your value out of denying offense a lot of things. And as I try to sell myself on Ambipom, I more and more realize it's going in B-. As offense is good, I just feel like a lot of the time, offense will just Terra Ghost one of the setup sweepers or Terra Steal it, and then Ambipom loses all of its value right there. Because it no longer is revenge killing them all too consistently. So that's pretty funny. But I don't think it's terrible as a wall breaker. It's just one of those mons that I don't think you're really ever going to build into needing an Ambipom. And the way I view a VR, a lot of time is like, mostly A- and up, but even occasionally B+. You could build a team into needing a mon more feasibly. I mean, you'll sometimes get with some defensive mons that are going to be more niche. You could build into needing that, but that's usually because they'll end up with this. You'll have a team that has this super specialized utility or defensive need at the very end, and you'll go like, oh shit, this is a colossal team, isn't it? I don't think too many people have ever said that, but that's kind of how I view it. Balava's D rank, because this mon hasn't been used in months. Arcanine. Arcanine is a good mon. Trying to think about where I'd put Arcanine here right now, though, because there's so much more competition as a fire type now, but a lot of it isn't even competing with Arcanine, you know? Like, you got Emboar is like a similar-ish mon, and even then it doesn't really contend with Arcanine because they do different stuff, right? Where Arcanine kind of has a little bit more defensive utility, can actually go defensive if it needs. It has better setup sets, I would say. Emboar can do stuff with Bulk Up Sucker Punch, but, you know, Arcanine's got Howl with Terra Normal E-Speed, which is stronger. Like, trying to compare them, I mean, yeah, they do technically do a lot of the same stuff. I just feel like, in terms of function, it still doesn't end up being the same. Arcanine kind of leverages some of its defensive stuff between Intimidate or Flash Fire to switch in more. I don't really feel like Emboar does that. I feel like Emboar, you're always going for, like, the aggressive double switch or a pivot, because much more Alana recoil moves. And so you have to really do your best to prioritize your HP. You can't play as aggressively as an Arcanine. All that to say, I think I'd probably still put Arcanine up in the A's. This could get changed once I start putting more mons. Mostly this is just kind of preliminary. But the way I view it for Arcanine is that it's a little bit safer to use, and it does a little bit more overall for you. Emboar is just kind of here to hit shit really hard, and it's very good at that, mind you. I'm not trying to say Emboar is going to be like, you know, down here at all. It's going to be somewhere up here. I just think Arcanine you're going to get a little bit more mileage out of consistently, and being able to go offensive or defensive is at least cool. Now, coolness doesn't really contribute to viability, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility with what you want to do with it. Articuno, I guarantee you, is viable, but I'm putting it in D rank because we just can't justify ranking this mon. It hasn't shown anything, so it's kind of one of those things where maybe it's C rank. Like, I have theorized Alchemy more based because we can compare these two because both of them are mons where we haven't seen Alchemy. I could just theorize a little bit more with Alchemy reasons to use it in this metagame than I can Articuno right now. That's all there is. Then we got Galar Articuno. We've seen this mon a little bit on ladder and even in tournaments. I think was it GXC brought it in his circuit playoffs game. Maybe. Someone brought it recently into the NU circuit playoffs, though. And it's still okay enough. You've got, again, a mon with a lot of options that all will give you at least some sort of reason to try it out. Where Galarcuno can do the pivot set with Future Sight. You can also just run setup. And the setup sets are still super, super good. I think nowadays you probably are going to want to use Terra offensively more than defensively. But it's still perfectly fine if you want that defensive Terra like Terra Fairy. I just view it as Terra Fighting does a lot of the same. And maybe it's a little bit better because then you can tech Terra Blast more consistently. Hit your Pokemon like Brute Bonnet just so you don't miss. Hit Kaparaja, which is a, scary Pokemon. And you still have a Sucker Punch resistance, so it's, good for that as well. Again, kind of preliminary ranking. I think I'd probably put out Articuno Galar, though, around here. Really, the difference, we're going to have to compare it to Braviary. I think just the difference between it and Braviary is you're so much faster naturally. And so Braviary wants that speed stuff going on. It has to turn Esper Wing, which I feel like a lot of people view the Esper Wing sets as a little slow to get going, whereas Articuno Galar isn't dealing with that as much because you don't really need the speed boost. You generally are more happy to just rely on stuff like Terra to flip matchups. So yeah, Hisui Avalug's unviable because regular Avalug is viable, and I would definitely still put it somewhere in the A ranks. Between A and A-, I'm still not entirely sure, but it's shown that it's still a very good Pokemon. You can either go like a dedicated spinner set with Ice Spinner, Earthquake, Rapid Swing, Recover, and sadly, you do have to drop Body Press a lot of the time on those sets because of Chandelure. Giving that mon the freest of switch-ins is just not very ideal. Or you can go something with like Curse. Though generally a Curse set's not going to run Rapid Spin in my view, because again, moveset. You don't want to get super strapped for your move slots because you're gonna have like Body Press and you're still gonna need an Ice move. I mean, you could try Rapid Spin on those sets. It's just very, very awkward, and at that point, I feel like you're missing the bigger picture of what a setup Avalug is offering, which a lot of it is just completely countering the other physical, kind of slowish setup sweepers like Snorlax and Scrafty. Pretty good mon, though, and again, it does the same stuff it always has. Bastiodon, I'm also going to say a C rank at least, and a lot of that's because Iron Press is not bad whatsoever. Again, I mean, literally Terrastalize moment, you can make any bad matchup into a good one. But also, I think countering Toxtricity is worth something. Toxtricity is still one of the best wall breakers in NU, particularly with Chansey rising up into, what tier was it? RU? I think so. I think being able to do that is very, very, very valuable. So, yeah, it's at least a niche, and it's a steel type, so it's not like you're running something like a mono rock for that role. Just being a steel type naturally offers you something in helping check Dragalge and Gudra, and even like some of the fairies. Don't get Terra Blast grounded, you will die in one hit, but it's okay. Blossom, lol. Like some of these mons I could just go through and immediately D-rank. Like, let's be fair to that. Like something like Cramorant, Blossom, Dodrio probably. Like, why are we running Dodrio in this tier? Dugong. But, yeah. I'll get to them. Hisui and Braviary. Now, again, I kind of just view it as a little worse than Articuno, but I still feel like it's viable. And a lot of that, too, is Sheer Force sets are still really good. Like, or even just Tinted Lens. If you want a Tinted Lens, you could even still do Esper Wing on that. You still have a very strong attack that you could throw off. But then the speed boost, I feel, is a lot nicer for you. Because, well, like, the standard bulkier setup stuff that it could try and run, I just don't think you need the speed. Because you're gonna need like Calm Mind, you're gonna need Recover, Roost, And then you're going to want Flying Stab and Psychic Stab. I just feel like Esper Wing ends up not being the Psychic Stab, though. Like, Psyshock ends up being needed more. You need, like, Terra Blast. But offensive sets, obviously, yes, you go Sheer Force, you can't go Esper Wing because the speed boost doesn't come through. But you go not Sheer Force, Tinted still run offensive, so then you can actually make use of it. Then you start taking away counterplay. These two are so annoying for me to rate because I feel like I could easily put them both up here. I could also put them like both down here. It's very awkward. Maybe we'll go in the middle with them both. It's like I think Articuno Galar is notably better though, which is why I also want to separate them. Oh no, let's put them here for now. I think a lot of it too is Steel types wall the traditionally like scary sets, quote unquote, that you'd see these running. And yet, I mean, Terra Blast is still fine on each of them. It just seems like people don't ever want to Terra these mons. And I think a big reason for it is having to dedicate a slot to Terra Blast somehow feels worse on them when it really shouldn't, because something like Florges, for example, a lot of time on Calm Mind is going to run Terra Blast. And nobody seems to care then. So I don't know, maybe it's because your normal stab attack that you're relying on is just so bad. Something like Florges is just going to still be able to spam Moonblast, but these are going to be using like Hurricane. That just feels so detrimental to have to rely on. If you're like Hurricane Terra Blast, it just sucks. And I guess even like Psychic move Terra Blast ends up sucking because there's immunities to your Psychic move. I think, there we go. Solve the problem for me in real time. But I think I'd do something like this for these. Bronzong still feels like one of the weirdest mons. Where like, I feel like it fits a lot of teams and yet still ends up not carrying its weight. It kind of feels like Colossal in previous metagames to me, where I don't want to rank it too lowly, because it does actually get onto some teams by virtue of offering a lot defensively. It just ends up still feeling kind of mediocre even when you get it on the teams. Like, I think part of it's the passivity issue. It's just not strong. No matter how much coverage you give this, it doesn't matter. And you could try and say, well, Iron Press, you can go Stealth Rock Iron Press, or even just a dedicated Iron Press set. Yeah, so the set that has consistently struggled all gen, and nothing's really changed to make it not struggle. So disca. Oh god, very sad. Brute Bonnet. Brute Bonnet will be going up at least here, maybe here. I'm gonna put it in the A rank though now, because I want to see what else I have like up here. I might just end up feeling like I don't have justification to put Bonnet alongside other A-, or not A-, A+. But Brute Bonnet still has the same stuff it's always done. Spore stuff, strong Sucker Punch. You're seeing more boot sets as well pop up with Synthesis for extra sustain, because Bonnet is incredibly bulky. Terastallize with this boy too, it becomes even harder to take down, because yeah, Grass Dark's kind of terrible defensively, shout out to Wo Chien. But with Terra, fix all that. And this mod has incentive to Terra too, because you could go Sucker Punch, go Terra Dark, make that even stronger. Terra Fairy and Poison both generally help versus a lot of the mons that would otherwise take out Brute Bonnet. So it's not a mon that you look at Terraing as some terrible thing. And Bruxish, despite shock some of y'all, I'm still putting an A-. Bruxish, in my view, really has not fallen off too terribly with Poros. I think Scarf is maybe a little worse. And even then, it's not that much worse. It's mostly just competition. Water Poros is certainly better. Setup sets are just better. More defensive utility because of Intimidate and just the stats. But I think Flip Turn really does help Bruxish quite a bit. Being able to pivot whereas Water Poros can't is quite huge, because Water Poros will at times seize some momentum. And there are going to be matchups where you really can't wall break too effectively with it. And Scarf sets are just kind of, they end up feeling a little useless, because there's going to be always a pivot the opponent has where, yeah, you forced me out, but you're not actually getting damage that I care about. And I can even say, like, Flygon being in the tier now kind of hurts Scarf Water Poros a little bit, just because there's now another, like, very viable Scarfer. Whereas I think for a while, Water Poros felt like the best Scarfer by a country mile. And now it's, of course, not the case. So, Bruxish is obviously going to struggle the same way, but hey, at least it could pivot, right, if it goes Scarf. And in Bandit, Bruxish is still just incredible. And you just, you know, throw Ice Fang on it, you at least have a coverage move for Bonnet, you could even do Terrabat. Wow. I did not say that at all. Terra, bleh. Gonna go Terra Blast Fairy though. It's not too bad. Get coverage what you need. Oh, it's Titan Band. Chandelure. I like A, and this is where I kind of feel like Bonnet should be A+, right? Because I think I'd definitely rate Bonnet higher than Shandy. But Chandelure, I'm gonna throw up an A. Specs is morbidly a beast. I mean, dear God. Your switch-ins are not the greatest. I think Chandelure is gonna be still kind of a mon that could teeter around like through the entire A rank. So for now, I'm gonna put an A. I think we have enough people saying it's OP. My drawback with Chandelure, or the drawback I should say with Chandelure, because it's not just limited to me, is that you don't get as much leeway around the opponent's team as you'd like. Because hazards. If you're running non-boots, which honestly almost every Chandelure set that I've seen is non-boots. Maybe it's because people just want to run specs and see big number, or run scarf and say I still have big number next to my special attack stat, but I'm fast. Hazards, though, keep this mon in check very, very consistently. And since the best removal is Rapid Spin, it can be a little hard at times to actually keep your hazards off the field, or keep the opponents off the field, because yeah, they will simply go to their ghost type. And although our spinner, I was gonna say our spinners, but really Avalug's not even bad into the blockers, it's just not as good as you'd like. Serena can deny a lot of the common spin blockers their happiness, but even then, they're gonna be mons that Terra Ghost, and that Serena doesn't beat down as easily. Which can make it hard. It could even be like an opponent's Avalug. They could have Terra Ghost on their lug and then use that to spin block Serena the whole game. And it gets very bleak very quick. So that could make Chandelure just less imposing, which is why I don't really buy into the people ranking it this highly. But all that said, I mean, Specs doesn't have a ton of consistent counterplay outside of Snorlax and maybe Trace Porygon too. If you're running Flash Fire Shandy, of course you're then walled. It can trick them, but it just means it's not as demonic and as a breaker. And then you got some other options like Dragalge, Goodra that can help stave it off a bit too. Zard, I'm gonna put it in like B- because frankly, Autosun hasn't seemed all too great this gen, and Zard's not even necessarily super mandatory on those teams. So I would even say that those builds get worse with mons like Arcanine, Chandelure, Dragalge, Goodra. You know, Porygon 2 even at least is a mon that can switch in like once and see what you lock into. Not as good as it used to be. Though, I think Sun as a build, I don't feel like rating below B-, because I think it's certainly viable. Clawitzer, lol. Colossal, I think we're better than this now. Maybe Colossal is still worth ranking in like C. I'm gonna be honest though, I don't think it is. I feel like we could use better Pokemon. Maybe C. I'll put it in C for now. Just shout outs to the Colossal stands in chat. Shout outs to Colossal stands, but I don't know. What is he doing? Colossal feels like the epitome of just kind of annoying as you fish for the Flame Body burn all game. I don't know. I feel like C rank right now looks like truly dire. I might remove stuff at the end. We'll see. Copper, I'm going to put an A+. Some people might say it should be S. And I definitely see where you're coming from there. Because, I mean, I'm tempted to put it S. Because I believe, personally, it's the best rocker. I just don't think there's any one dominant Stealth Rock setter right now. I don't feel like there's any one dominant Steel type right now. Like, that's heads and shoulders above them. And although Raj is really, really good, you know, you check so many random mons in the tier. Even just like look here. Check Diancie, Dragalge, Goodra, Jolteon, the Oricorios. Like, that's a lot of great mons to be checking. I don't feel like Raj defines the metagame to such an extent that it's an S ranker. It's really where we draw the line. So yeah, Cramorant, no. Crocalor, no. Decidueye? God, I can't even say I've seen Decidueye since the shifts. I'm gonna be honest. There is a part of me that wants to try defog Decidueye some. but I genuinely don't see it. I think it's like down in C rank at this point for me. I don't really think you can get it on too many teams because you're gonna be forced into some really, really slow builds, which I'm not a huge fan of right now. If you're going defog to Sid, at least that's my take based on my attempts at building with it. And I don't think Sword Stance is very good. Too many dark types that shut it down. Shadow Sneak doesn't pick off mons like it used to. I don't know. I just really don't like the mon. Shadow Sneak is still really good use, like, priority though. Like, look at a lot of mons up here. There are a lot of mons that you do threaten with a sneak. So it's not like it's the end of the world, it's just, man, I don't really see the use in playing Decidueye now. Feels bad. Delphox. I'm just gonna continue putting every fire type, I guess, in A. I still really like Fox. I think Encore is particularly cool on it, because you can generally just plot it versus most of those special walls that are gonna switch in. And if they try and set up on a predicted switch, and you just Encore lock them immediately. And you have Terra to cover some of the dark types, so they don't even really get to exploit you. It just felt very consistent when I've used Fox. And I think it helps that a lot of special walls outside of Umbreon don't really take you on too well anyway, and Umbreon's response to you is to status you. So they put that little timer, but it's not like they're beating you down. Like, okay, I'm toxic. You better dodge the Fire Blast that's following up that's gonna KO you. Otherwise, good luck. Have fun in Uganda. Dugong Lamau. Diancie. I'm gonna put Diancie. I feel like Diancie could be an A, but I'm gonna put it A-. A lot of it's just because of awkwardness to build with. I feel like mons like Duraludon and Dragalge end up kind of reaming a lot of these builds. And Diancie, yeah, I mean, I feel like you have to always then run a Steel type alongside it. Like, you gotta go Bronzong or Kaparaja. And we're talking mostly Stealth Rock Diancie here, just for the record. Because if you're gonna build around, like, setup Diancie, obviously a lot of those issues go away. But I don't feel like the setup Diancie sets are just so potent that they justify ranking it a whole lot higher. They're really good. They don't move the needle for me maybe as much as they should. Because then I look at utility Diancie and again, like I said, I just feel like the building is so bad because Diancie defensively is not what you'd want it to be. And there's a lot of natural overlap with the Steel types that you'd use, like Klefki, Kaparaja, even Bronzong. It's not offering you too much uniquely outside of the fire resistance. And although that's really good, I think a lot of the time you could still end up fine into the fire types just through, again, throw like a Dragalge on your team. Maybe A rank could be fair for this, but for now I put it A-. Diplin, I'm just gonna keep the stack at you. I don't think this mon is worth using. Probably is fine enough. If I was gonna do C-, maybe it's there, but nah. Ditto, I'm gonna put B-. I think it's cool for offense. I think there's a lot of mons worth shutting down that Ditto does help with. Even like pivoting into a mon like Chandelure if you want to try and aggressively get it in on Fire Blast and trace the Flash Fire. I think that can be pretty cool. We just have so many potent setup sweepers at the top of the meta that I think Ditto ends up being quite good. At least when you queue into them properly. And always shutting down, in quotes, hyper offense and stall, I think is valuable. Dodrio, no. And this one's entirely because there's better competition. I mean, you just can't justify Dodrio unless you want to use it. Staraptor's quite literally better. Dragalge. I'm putting Dragalge in A+. I don't know how many people think this is a hot take. But again, Dragalge is just as good last gen. Well, not just as good as not banned. But Dragalge is still incredible this gen. You still, yes. The one detriment to Dragalge, outside of like, no, it's slow and it has exploitable physical defense, things like that, right? Klefki, that's like the one detriment. I can still flip turn on you infinitely, unless you're like Helmet. And even then, I'm gonna say I can flip turn on you infinitely. I guess a T-Spike maybe isn't as incredible as you'd like it to be. Like, basically every team is a grounded poison type. Or their, spinner has boots. But it doesn't really matter, man. Like, man, we're fine out here. Mon is an incredible breaker still. And
because there's not really a ton that switches in on you outside of steel type safely, flip turn's pretty just free to go for on those switches. I was like, what are the other things that might switch into you? You're looking like maybe Diancie and Porygon 2? I will Sludge Bomb poison you. And guess what? Heal Bell's not in the game. Umbreon, same fate. I will Sludge Bomb poison you. Guess what? You can't even synchronize that over to me, boy. I'm a poison type. That's not how that works. Also just checks a lot of mons. Like we talked about, a lot of fire types earlier get checked. There was another mon that came to mind that literally left my mind as quickly as it entered. Salazzle. Also one of the better Salazzle checks in the tier, unless they have like Terra Blast or, you know, they could Corrosion Toxic you, but hey man, you can't have everything we want in life. Very, very good mon though. Drifblim, no. I'm not using, we've evolved. Same with Colossal, except I think Colossal maybe is a little bit more justification just because it could throw up a spike too. But I think generally we've moved past this. The Dunsparce. This is genuinely a tough one to rate for me. Because, like, Coil, Serene Grace, Body Slam stuff should still be viable. I just don't know what the purpose of the Dunsparce is in a meta with Lax and Scrafty and Glowbro. Like, there's so many mons that do the same idea that the Dunsparce does, but they do it a little bit better. I think I'm still going to put it in C. Maybe this isn't worth putting in C and we should just unrank it entirely. I do believe there is still a niche to Dunsparce with Coil, Serene Grace, Body Slam. I do think you could justify that on teams. It's just, again, it's going to be a mon, like a lot of these are, that you have to explicitly build around. Because you really have to say to yourself, do I want to use this over Snorlax? Do I want to use this over Scrafty? That are going to be a little bit better at what they do. That's my take. Duraludon, I'm gonna put this in A-. I think it's still really, really good. Just like last gen. Now, maybe last gen isn't the best example, because Duraludon got up to like, what, B+-ish? A- maybe on the VR at its peak. After Dragalge and Gujar were both banned. And now those are not bad in this gen. However, in a view like this, Iron Defense is very good with Violite. And I think even just having a steel type that's able to pivot in on Staraptor is always really good. Which they all do, but I digress. There's still a little bit of appeal to it outside of just, you know, setting up. Eviolite really does a lot for you. And I do like on offense the eject pack stuff. I think it's just generally still really, really good. Duraludon's one of the better leads for offense if you want Stealth Rock. And you kind of beat up on any team that decides, hey, Diancie is a valid check to Dragon types, because you will just Flash Cannon that mon and it will die. So, pretty cool mon. I think maybe B+ is a little bit more justifiable though, so I'm going to move it down to there. I've sold myself on a drop, even just after singing its praises. Good work, me. Hisuian Electrode. I mean, I can't fathom it's much worse than anything here, right? But at the same time, this mon is nowhere near as good at setting up the game for itself. It's gonna be Volt switching far more than it used to. Which is kind of funny too, because Gligar has definitely regressed a lot in this metagame. And yet I think Electrode is worse, despite, you know, one of the previously premier ground types that you were forced into Leaf Storming. It's still not KOing, because, you know, it wasn't weak to Leaf Storm. Taking a little bit of a dip in viability. Obviously some of that's because of Flygon. I think Flygon's rise partly is why this mon's hurt, because now there's a mon that's faster than you, and you can't Volt Switch pivot on, and Leaf Storm doesn't one-shot. Just enough things working against it. Emboar is definitely a tick below the other fire types, and I think I'd put it in B+, specifically for that. It requires, I don't know, I think actually I'd put it A-, because the best comp here is Chandelure, where they both require quite a lot of support due to longevity issues. I think the difference is Emboar maybe is even more hard-pressed, even though Chandelure is weaker to hazards. One, Emboar's not that much less weak, and because it's spamming out the Reckless moves, it's taking even more chip just from attacking, which then kind of amplifies the hazard weakness. It's also not particularly fast. And so you're just put in a terrible, terrible speed tier spot where there's a lot of mons, like even something like Serena, for example, that do have a little bit of an extra edge on you, because they're just going to be able to outspeed you in revenge kill, pending your HP. Espeon, one of these spots. stats. I think I would put Espeon probably an A-. Mostly, this is off the merits of Psychic Terrain, and even to a lesser degree, Sun. I think the question is, how good do you view Psy-Terrain teams, and how well do you think Espeon is doing on them? I think Espeon is pretty good on these builds, and I also don't think it's carrying them the way Sceptile is. But with the terrain, you do get the super strong expanding force, and the Mon is quite powerful. Like, that's such a bland take, of course, but I mean, it's just true. You break really, really well, and you can help support something like a Sceptile that runs Rock Slide, because you are going to pressure all of those steel types to be in range of its +2 acrobatics. And something like Sun, I mean, Espeon's just nice to have around because you do support it better than Hatchrim. Well, arguably. You're a better Mon than Hatchrim. Man, I don't care. I'll put Espeon in A. Fight me. I do like the Mon. I think it enables a lot of offense builds in a really, really, really good way. Whether it's because, again, Sun, Magic Bounce is particularly useful, and you can even have Weather Ball stuff, which is cool. Or Psychic Terrain, you're just an incredibly potent wall breaker for one of the most potent setup supers in the tier. So, that's my take. I think Espeon outside of those two archetypes kind of sucks, which maybe is why you'd put it A-. But I do like it on those builds, and hey, we'll judge it based on where it's strongest. Executor, right there, buddy. Flamingo, I'm putting in A as well, because some people would see Staraptor in the tier and go, isn't Staraptor better? I would say no. I don't think Staraptor is actually better than Flamingo. The biggest reason is hazard weakness, once again. Staraptor. Literally compare Staraptor to, it's like the Emboar, except I'd say worse. I'm actually going to say Emboar's B+, by the way. I don't think I'd put it on the tier of these guys. Could be higher, though. Especially if the meta slows down, Emboar will rise up. But the way I see Flamingo is this. I'm not weak to hazards. I don't spam recoil moves all the time. And I'm harder to wall, so I think Flamingo is pretty clearly better. It can even be A-, or not A+, A+, frankly, but I don't know if I say it defines the tier like these guys yet, so put an A. Also, yeah, Espeon, I'd put an A-. See, this is how you do, like, the ranking as you go, where you get that little preliminary spot, and you see things that feel out of place, and you adjust. But yeah, I just think it's better in Raptor because it's not as prone to getting weakened over the course of a game, and it's a lot harder to wall. That's all there is to it, friends. Floatzel. Now, this is a very interesting one, because we've seen some people lately trying out Floatzel as just like a general pivot, because it is really strong with Wave Crash. It's really fast, and so people aren't keeping it limited anymore to rain like they used to. I do kind of like it. I think people, again, a lot of it's exploiting how bad in-use water resistances are, because we don't have, like, any great immunity. Sorry for just violating my microphone there, wow. But I feel like that helps it a lot, because it gives you a nice little roll on balance. Even offense, like, you could be on some, like, nice Volt Turn offense, and it works out pretty well on those teams. I don't think, again, it's kind of in that weird spot for me. B, I feel like it's kind of a purgatory spot where, you know, you're kind of trending in either one direction, but I do feel Floatzel has a little bit more room to go up, especially if, like, manual rain ever starts being solved a little bit. Maybe then Floatzel could go up more. Florges board is definitely in, like, A for me. I think Calm Mind with Terra Blast Ground is pretty vile, and you even have Synthesis, which is a nice little leg up on Sylveon. And so you're not going to have to wait 2 turns for Wish. You can end up actually having both your attacking moves and still get your sustain going. And all of that is in conjunction with being able to still run the Wish support set if you want. I think the big leg up that Florges gets on Sylveon is being able to run Calm Mind alongside then another Wish Passer if you want to try and go that route. So you can go like Florges plus Umbreon, have a very nice defensive core, still get your potent setup super here. Pretty cool. Flygon, first S-ranker, finally. Y'all know why. We did a whole video on Flygon, man. Well, go watch that if you haven't yet. Especially if you're 39 minutes, 30 seconds in. Go watch the Flygon video too. But, to summarize, super versatile. Compresses so many needs into one little team slot between Revenge Killer, Volt Switch blocker, ground immunity, potentially priority with first impression. It can set up with Dragon Dance, and those sets are really hard to stop. It could be a really good wall breaker. I think CB Flagon's probably one of the top 3 or so wall breakers in the tier. Has some cool lure set that it can run. Just overall, I don't need to keep selling on Flagon. It can fit on almost any damn build. Frostmoth, I'm gonna be honest. Frostmoth is definitely viable, but I am tempted to say D rank it. I'm gonna put it in C, because it's definitely not D rank. D rank implies unviable, and I don't think it's unviable. It's just even more Terror Reliant, I feel, than some of the other mods in the tier that we call Terror Reliant. It's so slow, you need 2 quivers to not be still revenge killed. Like, a lot of the revenge killers of the tier are just still faster than you after 1, which sucks. And a lot of them are physical sweepers too, so they're still gonna just one-shot you. I mean, one thing that is good about Frostmoth, right, is that Flagon locks into Earthquake. That is actually a mod you can set up on, which I find pretty cool. But yeah, you have to save Terra for Frostmoth, basically, or else Steel types and even Fire types are going to give you hell. So, very awkward mod to use. Glast. Glast is a very tragic mon. I'm going to put it down here. The thing with Glast, you could compare it to Glastrier in Gen 8, where there's a lot of the same mons around. And you might wonder, okay, well, Glast is like A- on the VR for Gen 8 NU, so why is it so much lower here? One of the big issues for Glastrier in Gen 9 NU is there's a lot fewer mons that you look at as just pure, you know, I get free turns on you. This is turns where I can just sub up SD, maybe, you know, just attack you even if I need, but most of it's, again, a free sub SD where I can get that guaranteed sub, maybe just sub and then attack. What were those mons? Mantine, Vaporeon, and Gastrodon. Guess what we don't have anymore? Bulky water types. That's the biggest hit to Glastrier's viability. You don't have that bulky water type on every team guarantee like you used to, and so there's just fewer mons that you know, fewer meta-defining mons, mind you, that you get to set up on, you get to exploit, etc., etc. And that really hurts, because you look at a lot of these top-tier mons, not a lot of these you just look at and go, oh yes, I could guaranteed exploit this mon. I mean, even something like Avalugg just being so prevalent, right, kind of kills your viability, because this mon, you're not beaten down. And then you still are dealing with the issue of Snorlax and Scrafty existing and being some of the best setup supers in the tier. Now, and again, I have a B instead of C because I still think functionally Glastrier does a lot of good. It's just, actually, I don't know, I might drop it. I'm putting it in C. So why did I change my mind? Supporting this mon, very, very difficult. Hazard control is really bad. All the issues that we've talked about it having in the past about, you know, slow, bad defensive typing. These all exist, and you even just don't have the same justification. You know what's crazy? I could unrank Glass right now, and I'd say it's okay. Boom! Went from B- to D rank in one patch. Look at that. Also, Golduck and Golem, lol. Get rid of those now. Gligar. This might surprise some of y'all. I'm putting it in A-. I don't think Gligar is nearly as good as it used to be. A lot of it is because Flagon usurps its role in a lot of teams, but you can get them both going. It's just a little bit redundant in some ways. Most of it's Gligar will give you the sturdy fighting resist, and then a hazard of your choice. But Gligar, I feel, in this new meta just doesn't... It's hard to explain. There just is... When you're trying to use Gligar, I just feel like it doesn't carry its weight like it used to. Maybe some of its Palisand feels a little bit better to use now because of the recovery. I think realistically, the power level went up, and now Gligar's bulk isn't as good, and so not having Roost feels particularly bad. So some wall breakers maybe were doing like 30% to you now. Well, now that same type of wall breaker is solidly 3-hit KOing you. You know, maybe stealth threat go up. These wall breakers now 2-shot you. Palisand, at least, has, you know, still the benefit of being a great fighting check, but also has shore up. So if I'm taking a strong hit from something like Staraptor, I don't have to worry about being super low now. I can at least recover back my HP. And, you know, Gligar could be paired with Wish Passers. It's just those builds aren't very good right now. And so, hard to get that support and be, like, really happy about it because, well, you're running a little bit of a suboptimal team type. So, that sucks. Still a good mon. I mean, again, it's an A-. These are all good mons. It's just not, like, S rank now, which is fine. And wow, we have a lot of mons left. Damn. Goodra. Goodra is still very good. Goodra is still a very good mon. Like we mentioned earlier, good Chandelure check. Shadow Ball does a million, but you're still a good check. You check Delphox. You check Salazzle. There's a lot there, but naturally I rated a little bit more lowly than Dragalge because when mons come in that do actually give you a little bit of issue, Dragalge can immediately get out and keep your momentum up. Goodra has ways around them with Toxic and Knockoff. It's just a little bit more slower paced, and like we just talked about with Gligar even, I don't feel like that's the best path for building in this meta. So it's kind of just a meta contextual thing. I like Dragalge a little bit more than I do Goodra. Grafaiai. B-. And it's entirely for Unburden on terrain. You can stack it with Sceptile if you want, and they both work well together. That's really it. I mean, that's all I have to say about this mon. Unburden on terrain is still usable. Hello, friend. Hello, dog. Hariyama! Wait, why is Brooks issue I picked up? Wait, where did Hariyama get put? Help! Here he is. Hariyama? I don't know, man. Because the issue with Hariyama is, like, it's just outclassed by Scrafty, I feel, in most regards. Also, I'm sorry, I keep having dogs barking in the background. I got no clue why they're upset about anything. Give me one moment, I'm gonna pause this. Alright, there we go. So, Hariyama being outdone by Scrafty is kind of shit. And, you know, we say outdone. They're fighting types that use bulk up on defensive sets. It's more than that. It's just you're not ever getting them on the same team, and Scrafty is leaps and bounds better. You look at a lot of the mons that are good in this tier. I mean, Hariyama still matches up very well into most of them, is the thing. Outside of, like, Glowbro, or Vileplume, which kind of, you know, you take your L and you move on. It's still a fine mon. It's just not the premier bulky setup mon either. You have to justify it somehow over Scrafty, which the bulk up set's never going to do, so it has to be something like AV. And, like, if I'm using AV on this, I'm using something else. So I'd rather throw it down and C, where I think you could still get some use out of, like, Belly Drum as a niche. And even then, that set's kind of on life support. I mean, it is a very, very hard to use mon at this point. Heracross, I'm going to outright say is not worth using at this point, I think. I think maybe you could still throw it C. I don't know, man. I don't know what Heracross is supposed to do anymore. I really don't know what Heracross is supposed to do in this tier anymore. It's not worth it as a wall breaker, because we have better fighting type breakers that are faster. Same with a Scarfer. I don't know what he does. Man, fuck. I'm unranking Heracross. It feels weird to have Heracross alongside these, but it's just not worth it. Sand I'm actually also going to unrank, because we just don't see it anymore. And I think it's enough justification to keep it out of here. Maybe it's still fine to say is C rank, but man, it just doesn't seem good. Hitmonchan, no. Hitmontop is an interesting one. Right, definitely throw it in the Purgatory rank at least. I think as a spinner, it's perfectly fine. It's just kind of annoying to use. It's one of those fake bulky Pokemon where I feel like you think it will take hits a lot better than it does. So you end up with this like Assault Vest Intimidate combo where you just kind of pray that you're able to switch into just about everything okay enough. And what's nice about it too is you do keep a lot of offense in check. You could have like, God, you could have triple priority if you want with Fake Out, Sucker Punch, Bullet Punch, Mach. You could have quadruple priority if you want. Now it's terrible, you want triple Axle. But the point, of course, is you have a lot of priority options, and there's a lot of mons that you want to keep in check with priority in this tier, like Salazzle, Delphox, and even like DD Flygon to throw out another. So, fine Pokemon there.
And who was next? Oh, Hoopla. We're past using Hoopa. It's not even like Hoopa's bad, it's just the other mons are now better. That's really just it. I think Hoopa is another mon where, like, I could probably put it in C and it's fine. I just don't really see a reason to use Hoopa at this point. And, you know, you may look at it and it's like, oh, but Chansey left. Yeah, versus, you know what I did versus Chansey? I ran Substitute previously. And I beat it down that way. So, it is what it is. Kind of just unfortnite. Houndstone is going to C, and it's literally for spin blocking. In terms of spin blockers, Houndstone is the best. Outside of that, it does nothing. And even inside of that, it's very hard to get onto teams and feel good about using Houndstone, in my view. I think it's an okay enough defensive mon. I just don't think being the best spin blocker is, like, overly valuable. A lot, you know, like I said about Avalugg, for example. A lot of time I'd just rather have Terra Ghost on a very, very bulky Pokemon and use that as my spin blocker. But I think this still works fine as a mon. You know, you're looking at some of the best mons in the tier that it can check. I'd say the best, not the best, I'd say the biggest, words, why can't I speak? The biggest detriment to Houndstone, outside of, again, kind of awkward pace for this meta for a team it would go on, is checking CB Flygon. You literally don't without, like, Terra Flying. Because Fluffy doesn't work against Earthquake, so CB Flygon is still gonna do, like, upwards of 50 to you, which sucks. Indeedee, I'm putting an A-. Psychic Terrain is fantastic, and I think putting it alongside one of the best Psychic Terrain abusers makes sense. I think these builds are very, very good, though. A lot of it carried by the Indeedee, Espeon, and Sceptile Core, but I like it. It does nothing else, by the way. It's there for setting up terrain and leaving. Healing Wish. That's all. That's all, folks. That's all it does. But good enough. Iron Thorns. I'm putting you in A- too. Thorns on terrain is actually pretty devious. Like, all of Psychic Terrain, Electric Terrain, and Grassy Terrain can make use of Iron Thorns. And even outside of them, it's a pretty good Dragon Dance sweeper. The only thing that keeps me from putting it higher is kind of what we mentioned in the video where I talked about Thorns, where I don't know if I talked about it in the video, it might have been in a comment reply. But my only gripe with this mon is all your moves are so damn weak. Then you have to be booster energy attack, I feel, to not be reliant on getting up multiple Dragon Dances to do something with this mon. And even then, there's plenty of mons that can try and Terra versus you that are bulky enough to still take like one hit and put you in range of something revenge killing you. If you're gonna run that booster tech set, because then, you know, again, only +1 speed, so a lot of things still are faster, etc., etc. So good Pokemon. I could even see me putting it in A on another day, but for now we're gonna put it in A-. Yeah, I'm happy with them. Jolteon, fuck you. It's going in like B-. I don't think Jolteon is that good anymore. It's still a fine mon to run, and Alluring Voice having that is really cool because now you've got a super effective move for Flygon to hit it on the switch. Yeah, actually, you know what? I can't really justify saying Jolteon's worse than Floatzel. But that is a nice buff for it. You don't have to have Terra Blast anymore, which means you could run like Terra Blast Water if you'd like. Generally useful typing. Also means you're a water type with only one weakness, thanks to Volt Absorb. You can even do like Terra Blast Fighting and have a super effective move for the steel types plus Brute Bonnet, and you still get that resistance to Sucker Punch. So I do find that pretty awkward, I was gonna say. Pretty awesome. Fun mon. Klefki. I still think Keys is pretty good. Throw an A-. Again, countering Gigalgy is quite huge, and I rate it as roughly the second best steel type in the tier. You can run like Keys Palisand teams, I believe, still pretty easily, and offering a check to Psychic Terrain is really impactful as well. Because keep in mind too, if Sceptile Terra Flying's versus you, you're able to get a T-Wave off on it then, but you also might just check it. There's a shot versus Sceptile that it doesn't have Earthquake, and you just wall it. And you're gonna pop it with a Foul Play, and it's wraps. So, does a lot of good. I might even say that's more like A rank. I'll put it A- though for now, because Avalugg I honestly don't know if I'd say it's better than, but definitely a really solid one. Then we got Lantern, no. Then we got no. No. Like, these are Sunmons, so you could say they should be ranked. I don't know. Do I view the Sun rejects as worth ranking? Take this as me, like, verbally saying, yeah, you could probably rank it, but I don't know if it's worth it. Lycanroc. I'm gonna put Lycanroc, I think, in B-. There's enough competition now for the lead slot on HO with, like, Duraludon and even just the Booster Energy Speed Ironborn stuff, to where I don't think Lycanroc anymore is just definitively the best lead for Hyper Offense. But I do think it's still good. I still like it. Again, I love the Endeavor CCSL Rock, Stealth Rock set. Even you can have Taunt if you really need it. It's enough for me to still keep it ranked. Definitely. Magmortar. I'd use another fire type. Magneton, I don't think trapping's all that good. Malamar, it probably is viable. And I'll be generous with Mr. Squidward. I will put it in C. Now, how you justify using this over Snorlax and Scrafty? Don't ask me. I haven't thought of the answer yet. But I'll put it C for now. I mean, being a dark type off rip is decent enough. It's just, again, how do you justify it over Scrafty? Meganium, no. Meloetta Melody, sick up on this remedy, something like that. Meloetta's one of these two tiers. I think I'm gonna say A+, though. I've had a lot of success with, like, every Meloetta set I've used between Specs and Scarf and CM. Even, like, bulky with AV. I really do believe this is one of the best mons in the tier. Especially AV being so nice to have that pivot that isn't weak. I love it. Really strong pivot, really bulky. Still actually does damage. Ooh. Lots of good things. And having a ghost resistance, too. Not even ghost resistance, ghost immunity is pretty cool, but it's a lot of time. And I mean, it's really hard to get a ghost immunity on your team with Porygon 2, Snorlax, and Meloetta really being your only options for, like, consistently using them. I think Meloetta finds itself able to be stapled onto the most teams just because of how much you get out of it in that one slot. So, I like it for that. Meowstic, no. Miss Magus, I'm gonna be honest, I just don't think is worth using in this tier anymore. It's kind of overstayed its welcome. Mudsdale, I genuinely don't know when I would use Mudsdale. I'm putting it B-. And, like, realistically, it's probably higher. I just, over Gligar, over Palisade, like, when am I using you? I don't know. It's just so passive in this tier now. The only thing it's got going for it, in my view, outside, like, it's got good mixed bulk. That is something worth talking about. Maybe enough to keep it B rank instead of B-. Its stamina body press is, like, the one thing kind of keeping it not irrelevant. Even, like, Roar is kind of useful. But I feel like you never are getting it onto teams without a lot of mental gymnastics to justify that mon. Ninetales, I'm putting B- for Charizard. I think Sun's about here for viability. Oricorio Fire, oh my god, this is gonna be terrible. So Pom Pom, I would put an A, at least. I think Pom Pom is probably the most consistently threatening out of them all. You just run into more bad matchups with it than you used to, so I don't think I'd put it too much higher. Fire Oricorio. Fire Oricorio. Now this one I think you almost always want to go offensive with, personally. Just because the offensive coverage is absurd. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put the next two down in B+. I think they're both about the same in use. Not in use, in terms of viability. I think Fire's issue is Diancie. Or, not even issue with being Diancie. I think Fire's issue is, again, Terra to get past Diancie and a lot of the Fire types, if you're not running an offensive set. This is really just the issue, again, with the Oricorios now. There's just so much more reliance on rolling the perfect matchup, whereas I think previously in the metas, they could just have the perfect matchup kind of independent of what their opponent brought. You know, maybe you ran into a Chansey and that was a detriment if you didn't have, like, the taunt stuff. But otherwise, you were pretty much good to go. You could run 2 attacks with Terra Ground and basically always be fine. At least for Bale and Pom Pom. Since there's a little bit more with the Terras.
I think nowadays, there's more, like if you're on mono air slash, for example, which I've seen a lot of, there's a lot of mons that check that. Like, a lot of mons that check that. It's like Copper Raja is generally going to shut these two down. Maybe you have to Terra to do it, if you're scared of, like, Bale being Revelation Dance, but you're keeping them contained pretty well. And you can just throw Rock Slide on it if you really want it, you know? It's not a big deal. It's just not the same. I still, like, I could easily see these going lower or higher even, because there's, with Pom Pom around, we don't see a lot of the other ones. This is more me making the executive decision of, these are still going to be really good. You know, even if there's no reason to use them, I still think they're really good options. They're not even that there's no reason, there's just a less reason to use them. Bale, I would say in particular, is the one with less reason to be used. It's more that I think Bale, in a vacuum, is still going to be about as good as Sensu, if not a smidge better. And so it would feel weird to me not to put them in the same tier. This is good. This is kind of the hard part about ranking these two, because as long as Pom Pom's around, you're probably not going to see either of these see a lot of usage. Where something like Oricorio Pawuga, as I love to call it, is kind of shit no matter how many of them are banned. Except the one meta where we had it probably like B rank on the VR. By that point, it was the only one and still only could get B. These two still feel like they could be good no matter what. It's always a tough sell with this damn demon here. It's hard. Earthworm, we're past Earthworm usage. Overquill, I really like. I'm going to put it in A rank. I like the utility sets quite a bit. Very consistent spiker, in my opinion. I think Pain Split's also just a cool option to keep yourself around. Because the Mon's bulk isn't amazing, but it's good enough. And most Mons with a neutral attack for you, like Salazzle, for example, they don't actually two-shot you. So you can generally trade down with them and beat them, which I do value quite a bit. And for spikers in the tier, we look at what we have ranked so far. Really, the only other Mon up here that sets him is Klefki, and I would probably venture a guess say I think Overcoil is better than Klefki right now. And you look at the other ones down here that are going to be spiking. Regular Quillfish is your competition, generally speaking. And those two don't really fit on the same team at all. So it's not really competition in that regard. You know, you use them on different teams because they got completely different defensive profiles. But you can always have it alongside a Lug or a Serena, and it fits out. Or it works out, I should say, very well. The only problem is the defensive, like, tandem that you'll get with them. They don't really do a lot for each other. So that can make building a little bit weird at times. The scarf set that I used in yesterday's upload was very, very fun, I think, partly because I didn't even need to set the spike, but I always had it as an option. And then you don't have to care about the defensive pairing nearly as much. Palisand, even with Terrakion gone, I still view Palisand as, like, probably the best fighting check in the tier. And that's enough for me to keep it an A. Also, good flag on check. Now, good flag on check in the sense that you're not two-shot, which, it's not really a high bar. Like, oh no, you live more than one hit. Congrats. But Helmet Palisand feels very good now with Terrakion gone. It's very funny. I feel like Terrakion leaving actually improved Palisand a little bit in viability. Specifically because now I can stop running lefties. Like, you wanted lefties originally because Terrak was so damn strong, you needed all the freaking recovery you could get. And it's not really like that anymore. You're also good Iron Thorns check, which is pretty huge. You're a decent Sceptile check with Terra. You don't even really need to Terra, but you can. And the only issue really that I have with Palisand is kind of comes down to a lot of these other mons that we talked about being not so great because the meta doesn't reward too slow of play right now. Palisand does kind of fit in that mold, but in my view with Palisand, the difference is I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. Like, you still have a lot that you get out of running Palisand in this meta, and it probably is. It and Copper Raja kind of showcase the two styles of balance that you can build and get away with pretty effectively in this metagame, at least in my view. And there's also Registeel. Registeel can actually fit alongside Palisand very well. Piloswine, it's probably viable enough, but I don't think I'd use it in this meta. Pincurchin, I'm going to put in B-, alongside a lot of the other offenses. Electric Terrain, we haven't really seen much of at all.
so far, but I do think that there's enough going for it to say that it's B-. You still have a lot of the same abusers from last gen, such as Sceptile, Raichu Alola, even like Charizard if we want to count it as an abuser, since you can throw Thunder Punch on it and get the boosted damage. But obviously, we don't have Rising Voltage on Alola, so that monster's worse. But still, it's still a fine enabler. Toad is completely useless without Drizzle. Poliwrath. Poliwrath could still be C, I guess. I mean, it's a swift swimmer, but we haven't seen any manual rain, so I don't really want to make that judge. I'm actually pouring on 2 and B+. I do believe P2 to be a pretty decent option. It's basically the Chansey substitute since that mon rose up. And you could do some stuff like Terra Ghost on it with Shadow Ball, T-Wave, Ice Beam, and Recover. And it does actually give you pretty useful coverage across the tier. I mean, even just look at these mons, like Ice Beam, Ice Beam, Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, Ice Beam, Ice Beam, Shadow Baller, or Ice Beam, Shadow Ball. Like, it's actually pretty decent coverage, and with the Violite and how bulky this mon is, you can kind of say no to a lot of the bullshit in the tier, too. You can even throw Foul Play on it, and you're bulky enough to take a lot of hits from random boosted physical attackers, which is not too bad. Overall, though, not like, you're not going to be using this mon too often, I don't think, but P2 plus Registeel, for example, is a pretty solid defensive core if you wanted to start off a team with that. Primeape, no. H-Quill, no, because you have Overquill, that's just better. Regular Quillfish, I'm also going to say is A rank, which feels weird because this mon should have fallen off a lot harder by now, and maybe it is more like an A- mon than it used to be, but I still find a lot of value for it. It and Palisand, I should say those both are the best fighting checks in the tier. And I just think every DLC giving Quillfish a tiny buff has really helped it. DLC 1, you got Flip Turn and Barb Barrage. DLC 2, you got back Pain Split. So you actually could stick around in battles for more than like one turn. It's just very consistently been at the top of the tier for me. Not at the top, but, you know, near the top. A lot of it just being because it checks so many random Pokemon. Maybe not as well as you'd like it to, but I think even the mods it doesn't handle super well, the nice thing at least is with Helmet, you end up forcing them to trade down. Like you think about like Staraptor and Flamico, for example, these mods have to trade a lot of HP to actually beat you down, and that actually is a point in its favor in a way. Raichu Alola, it's just going alongside E-Terrain. That's all I can say there. Regice, no. Regigigas, no. Regirock, no. Registeel, though, yes sir. I feel like Registeel is probably A-. Maybe A, though. Yeah, I'd say actually said Klefki's the second best steel. Registeel's definitely the second best. A lot of you are going to think about the set that I use with the Iron Defense Amnesia. We've also seen some people run Curse on Registeel, though, with like Body Slam and Earthquake. Or not Body Slam, Heavy Slam and Earthquake. As a nice little alternative where you're not hard-won by Chandelure anymore. Or any ghost type for that matter. Chandelure is just the most threatening I thought of at first. And you still get a lot of the defensive purpose. You can even still just do something like Stealth Rock with Iron Defense if you need. And then have Body Press, Heavy Slam as your coverage. And it still gets you a lot of that scary setup, but you get a little bit more overall utility. Because the one worry that you may have if you're running those pure setup Registeel sets is, okay, what if, you know, does this give me as much utility out of the slot as I'd like? Like something like Snorlax, I have Body Slam to Paraspread. Scrafty, I've got Knockoff to get rid of items across the opponent's team. And so running Stealth Rock Registeel is kind of a way to still get that team support going that you may want. Rhydon, I feel like this one's probably okay, but I wouldn't put it much higher than C. There's a lot of fire types for it to check right now. And kind of like the Snorlax meta we had previously, and a lot of the, this applies to a lot of the other bulky setup mons too, you could kind of take them on, but this month's kind of whatever to me. Regular Rotom, no. Rotom Mow, I do actually think is decent enough. I'd throw it into Purgatory of B, probably. But I think Scarf Mow is fine. Or like Plot Mow with Pain Split. You're able to bring down a lot of your checks like Dragalge and Goodra fairly consistently through games, just through pivoting and Pain Splitting where you need. Definitely don't think it's too bad of an option. It's just, wow, I don't know why this mon isn't better. No defog, really. What no defog does to a motherfucker, man. Salazzle. yeah, this mon is still incredible. Terra Ground now is just what people run instead of Terra Dark. You can still run whatever utility you want. You know, Encore Moment to shut down a lot of those bulky mons. Really not a lot else I can say about Salazzle. We've said so much about this mon throughout the gen. Terra Blast Ground covers, though, any of like the new mons that might check you. Nasty Plot still does Nasty Plot stuff. If you're gonna run like 3 attacks Encore Salazzle, that's still really just generally good. You deny a lot of the bullshit in the tier, what it wants to do. Yeah, Salazzle. Sandaconda, no. Sandslash, though, I think Sandslash is okay enough to say is like B. Like, I really can't say that Mudsdale is better than Sandslash. And so I put them about the same spot. Sandslash, you get to compress, knock off a hazard, and spin into 1 mon. I mean, that's incredible. And the bulk is good enough. That's all I have to say. Sandslash is good enough to be B. Fight me. Alolan Sandslash... Maybe it's like C, because you actually, with Abomasnow Veil stuff, can still definitely get away with Alola Slash on those teams. I'd actually probably put them together. There's a lot of time you do see these 2 mons on the same builds. And I think there's a little room to experiment with utility Alola Slash, but not really much. It's not what's carrying the placement. Sceptile, definitely put up here. I think I'd put it a little bit above, though, the Psychic Terrain stuff, because you can use it on other terrains. So it gets a little bit of a higher nod for me. SD Acra, though, we've seen this the entire gen. It is... But not the entire gen. The entire year! We've seen it for all of 2024, guys. But we see what it does so far. Very potent mon. The only holdback, really, to it... There's 2 things that are drawbacks. It's not that strong of a mon. Even with Sword Stance, like, the mon's base 85 attack. That you could get walled by quite a few things still +2. But then picking your last coverage move, you don't want to drop Rock Slide, because then Oricorio Pom Pom just sets up on you. Or just beats you down. But you also don't want to drop coverage for Steel types, because those are everywhere. But otherwise, I think those bulky Sceptile sets are truly evil. You live Sludge Bomb from Dragalge from full if you're Psychic Seed. Or at least there's a roll to. Like, what the hell, dude? Anyhow. Scrafty. Scrafty I would probably put in A+. I think it's... I called it, I will say. I said it'd be better than Snorlax, and it is. Entirely because you've got Knockoff, which is a little bit better for utility. You're also just harder to wall based on like coverage moves to pick, which is cool. And Drain Punch means you're not forced to rest as much. And even when you are forced to rest, you've got Shed Skin, so it's a little less dire. The only thing that you'd worry about with Scrafty, in my view, is picking the right Terra type. And even then, I think generally speaking, Poison is going to be fine, because you just bulk up past the threshold where things can kill you. And Psychic types, there's not like a ton that are super good. And a lot of them even will be running a physical, not a physical move, but they'll be running Psyshock. Ends up being that you can still check them decently well. Screamtail. I can't even really... I don't even want to rate Screamtail too lowly. I think it's like B+ right now. Screamtail denies a lot of those bulky setup mons very effectively. And even just offensive mons. This mon is very versatile in terms of what it can mess up with, because the faster mon's gotta care about T-Wave. Even then, like, Encore is still present. Whereas a bulky mon's gotta deal with, like, the Psychic Noise, Encore bullcrap, and even still T-Wave. Because T-Wave can, you know, you induce pairs randomly on mons, maybe they don't get a rest, maybe they just stop getting to throw off attacks, etc, etc. But Encore Psychic Noise shuts down a lot of stuff like Snorlax and Scrafty pretty successfully. Yeah. It's also a pretty fast Fairy type, which... yeah. I outspeed a lot of mons with it, so it's not too bad. It's just, again, a lot of it comes down to the mons bulk is so random. With T-Wave, you check offensive mons pretty well. And then Encore Psychic Noise shuts down all the bulky mons. It's really the idea we're going for. Scyther, I mean, it's probably viable, but I haven't seen it used at all. So, nope. Shaman, nope. This mon is not real. Why am I using Shaman in this tier? Look at up here. Where is Shaman coming into play? Oh god. Shiftry. No. Sun's not prevalent enough to where I could even feel Shiftry's worth ranking.
And even with Sun taken into account, the issue is it's not particularly good on Sun. Like, with Sun, you've got Espeon, Ninetales, Charizard, Victory Bell, and then, I don't know, Shiftry really doesn't end up ever feeling like it's one of the good 2 last mons. So yeah. Glowbro, A+, even with Quick Claw banned, you still have Nasty Plot Regenerator, and that set, in some people's eyes, was the best set all along. Actually, you know what? This might even be S. I'm struggling to think about what my S ranks are going to be by the end of this, because I'm going to be honest, there might not be anything else in S other than Flygon. It just feels wrong, because I'm not sure Flygon is that much better than everything else. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll move something else up. Maybe I'll just keep Flygon as the sole S and be like, it's the best Pokemon, smile. Yeah, Nasty Plot Regenerator still does a lot of the same stuff that people thought should get Glowbro banned. Defensively, it offers you a lot as well, whether you're AV to just scout just about anything, or fully physically defensive. You can switch into mons like Flamigo and Staraptor very well. And hey, if you want, you can still run Quick Draw on it. It's 30%, it's better than Quick Claw. So there you go. Snorlax, A rank, a little bit lower than the other guys just because I think it's a little less consistent, more pressured by hazards than they are. And Rest is, of course, less consistent in having Drain Punch plus Shed Skin versus just Slack Off and Regenerator. I could even see a world where you say Snorlax is more like A- rank, frankly. And I think I'll put it A- rank because it just feels like it's a lot easier to pressure. Now, you set up with it, it becomes just as scary as these two. But these feel like they're so much easier to use than Lax, in my view. Checking Chandelure very well is, though, nice benefit. Spiritomb now. Staraptor, probably like B+, maybe? Because I think the issue with Raptor is going to be Flamigo is always better, outside of like speed tier. There might be some mons that Flamigo doesn't outrun that Staraptor does that you want it for. But a lot of it comes down to, again, like what we said with Flamigo, where Raptor is so much more hard-pressed to stay alive throughout the battle because of that hazard's weakness and it having to spam out literally recoil moves or how it does damage. And then you got CC for steals, sure, but your CC isn't stab, so a lot of them just stay in, they'll take the hit, and they'll just KO you. It's a very sad existence. I might have actually even say Staraptor's lower. I could see it. Our Screamtail's higher. Though I don't think Screamtail's actually that good, so probably more like this. I'd still say Raptor's better than these, though. But I think I'd do like this. I'd say Sandslash is more like a B+ mon. Yeah, I like that more. Looks weird, but whatever. Sylveon, A- to me. I think it's just a little weaker. Not weaker. I think it's just a little worse than Florges, though. That's going to be your primary competition outside of like Umbreon talking about Wish Protect stuff. But as we mentioned, Florges just a little bit better with Calm Mind because your coverage is easier to justify since you have Synthesis for instant recovery. If you're going to run Calm Mind Sylveon, unless you're going Mono H-Voice, then you're going to have to rely on Wish just activating the next turn without you getting KO'd. That's a little bit detrimental. Florges also a little bit faster, which is nice because there's going to be fewer Pokemon that are able to pressure it as it's trying to set up and maybe start throwing off its attacks. Spec Sylveon is cool, but haven't really seen it do too much yet. In theory, it should do quite well, though, with Terra Blast Ground. I mean, look at all the checks to it. Terra Blast messes them up bad. Tatsu Midi. Yeah, mid. Waterporous, I still believe, is one of the top 10 or so mons in the tier. So it will go up in A+. Bandit and Scarf sets still do what they used to. And like, literally, it's all just the sets still do the same work that they have been doing the whole gen. And Aqua Jet as priority, even now, is like maybe better than ever. Like, I look at a lot of the top stuff in the tier, and Aqua Jet priority just really helps out a ton versus you. There's so many fire types to pick off, and some of them are faster, potentially. If you're running CB Poros and you run into a Scarf Chandelure, for example, or a Nasty Plot Fox, or even just like a Scarf Flamingo, or an Oricorio, there's a lot, you want Aqua Jet to pick those boys off. So, goes up there. Fire Porous, meanwhile, I'm putting in D because genuinely, this mon is just so much better
There's no reason to use the fire one. So, yeah. It falls under that category of, like, usable, but are you going to use it? Eh. Okay, so here we go. Thunderous is probably actually another mon I'd put in S. I think if I had to say what the second best mon tier would be, it'd be Thunderous. A lot of it comes down to the plot set, I think is really good, and the utility set, I think is really good. So, utility Thunderous is kind of like the most free progress maker we have in the tier. Thunderbolt, U-turn, knock, and then like Grass Knot generally is what you're looking at there. It's just very, very free pivoting throughout the battle for you. But also, Nasty Plot, I think, is borderline unfair, if I can put it that way. You force out already a lot of mons pretty easily with it. And once you boost, I mean, nothing really takes two, nothing really one-shots you in response. Again, sometimes when these videos go on forever, I start losing track of, like, what I really want to say. But a lot of the mons that are tasked with generally checking special attackers don't really beat Thunderous all too easily. So look at them like Barrage. You better have Rock Slide if you want to beat me. Dragalge. This mon gets run on Hail a lot, so I will Weather Ball you in the face. Meloetta? Okay. You don't one-shot me, but sure. You don't one-shot me. AV, you better be AV, and you're still gonna take 1,000,000. Then we go down here, like a Registeel, you don't do anything to me. Goodra is one of like the mons that might actually be able to match up. It's just, most special defensive mons really are not taking it on that well. And then this kind of comes back to the utility set too, where you draw on a lot of these mons very well. You knock them, you U-turn, you Thunderbolt them, you T-Wave them even maybe. It's very good at supporting other special setup sweepers that need those other mons kind of softened up or taken out entirely. Like say maybe a CM Meloetta. Thwacky, I'm probably gonna put it in C. I think Grassy Terrain's probably the worst of all the terrains, so you know what? We got Psychic Terrain in A-, B- Electric Terrain, and then Thwacky with Grassy stuff down in C. Yeah, I think that's fair. Toad's Cruel, no. Tornadus. This one's actually really hard to rate, because I think it's just worse Thunderous by such a margin that it might be unrankable. I think maybe put it B- still. I don't know though, because if you're gonna say for manual rain, well, like you better be able to. I don't know. Maybe B- is okay, and we just pretend manual rain is good enough to get it a little bit higher. As this was a lot of the same stuff as Thunderous, it's just worse in every regard. So maybe it's more like C. It's like manual rain's where it can be justifiable, because Specs Hurricane is very, very, very easy to just throw off repeatedly. But, it's a tough sell as a Pokemon now. Because the pivot stuff Thunderous does better. And Nasty Plot Thunderous obviously does better too. So yeah, I think Torn is maybe C and maybe justifiable. You could unrank it entirely. Toxicroak. I'm gonna be honest again, this is kind of like the same deal with, which mon was it? There was something up here that felt weird to put in unrank. I really don't see a reason to use Croak, though, in this meta. It's probably okay. You know what? No. Here's the reason why I'll put it in C. Water immunity. That is basically it. Like, SD Croak, I think if you can roll into the right matchup with the right coverage, you may have something going well for you. And if you look at some of the top mons, things like Water Porous, you can kind of switch in on. Overquill, Quillfish, like there's enough stuff there that you kind of exploit. Do I think unranking Croak entirely isn't worth it? But it's a tough sell as a mon now. Toxtricity, you will be going all the way up in A or A-. Probably A. I think leading with this mon and boom bursting turn 1 is like one of the freer things you can do in this world. I could see an argument though to keep it down in A- with these. I just think as a breaker it's so consistent that A is a fair sub rank for it. Serena's actually like A+ here. It is the best hazard control in the tier by a mile, and even then it's
not like it's linked specifically to that. We've seen a lot of triple axle Serena lately because it kind of just dunks on most of the tier. Its coverage with grass, ice, and dark is very hard to contend with. And I think that's good. Like, you take out Dragalge with it, you take out Brute Bonnet too. I mean, U-turn's already good enough. Axle just helps even more. Axle gives you coverage for Thunderous as well, which you don't really want to be giving free ins to. Gives you coverage versus Flamigo, which you don't really want to be giving free ins to. A lot of reason to run it. Typh, I'm going to throw C. I guess you can run it on Sun. Though I'm gonna be honest, Shiftry I think is good enough to be ranked if Typhlosion's being ranked, so let's do that. Shiftry is good enough for a rank if Typh is. There you go. Umbreon, A-, because again, I don't love Wish Pass stuff right now. And I think a lot of the mons you'd have Umbreon around to check. You can have other mons on your team instead that still handle them. So like, think about like Zoroark Shandy. Well, you got mons like AV Meloetta, AV Glowbro. AV Glowbro, why did I mention that? AV Meloetta, which that's only for Shandy. Florges, Goodra, Dragalge, like these all these not, you know, varying degrees of success that they check. But you can stave them off with other mons. I'm just not a huge fan of the Wish Pass stuff. Ursaring, no. Uxie, probably okay enough for B-, just off of Terrain Seed stuff. Also, I'm actually going to put Thwackey in the same tier as Electric Terrain, because I do think it's genuinely not that much worse. And Uxie could match a fish with Terrain. You better have... What's it called? I think the best sets actually was Stored Power. Psychic Noise, I think in that video we did, it's just a bad move. The mon is way too weak, especially if you can't have your Terra around still. You need something that's going to actually make you a threat. And yeah, Psychic Noise is not going to. Venomoth, I just don't think it's very good. Maybe it's B- more so, but honestly, if Venomoth is like, if Venomoth is C, then I think we actually unrank Frostmoth entirely. Because there's no way you're gonna tell me that Glassed is unranked and Frostmoth isn't. I'm sorry. But with Moth, it's just a matter of it's not strong enough to actually break the defensive mons anymore. Still a potent enough mon where I think C is fine, but yuck. Victory Bell, gonna go with the rest of the Sun. Y'all already know what Victory Bell does. Vigavolt, bad. Vileplume, I'm gonna throw up an A. One of the better walls in this tier. It does the same damn stuff it did last gen. Still walls like every physical attacker. Doesn't have a super effective move for it. This today you've got Terra, so I could even check a Flamigo maybe with a Vileplume. Really, the only thing that hurts Vileplume, and maybe actually you could justify it down to A-, is you lose out on Corrosive Gas and Infestation, and while these don't seem like huge moves to lose, they definitely did extend the pool of mons that it could like really bother by a good bit. Like you could take items away from things like the Steels. And now you kind of have forced to rely on Leech Seed for a lot of that, which is just not as detrimental. So, shit sucks. Virizion I'm going to put down in C because this mon is kind of laughably weak, and I don't think has too much going for it that I really like. Really, the biggest thing going for it this gen is there is no Talonflame. And even then, I just think it has too many headaches with deciding on coverage. Whoa, Chen, I'm gonna be honest, this mon is dog shit. Get this out of my tier. I didn't know. And Zoroark, I think we'll round off with a nice little Zoroark in A- rank. I think this works out nicely. You know what's crazy too? Originally with this VR thing, I was gonna do no B- rank, and as I look at now, this kind of solidifies me thinking I was right. But yeah. I think this is about how I would tier current Inu. There's going to be some things that, again, you saw how through the video, I had moments where I was like, maybe put it here, maybe here. Definitely there are going to be changes that maybe just ask me at a different time, I would give you a different answer. Or even just change the words, like, it's more a range where I think the mon works on. Though, this is roughly how I would, do the tier right now. Hope y'all enjoyed. Hope you found this helpful. You got any? You want to give any opinions on how you view Pokemon? You know, let me know down below. Thank you for watching. Like I said, movie feature video. I got a nice little hour and a half long video for y'all. Nothing major. I'll get you to the next one, guys. Peace.